All right, friends, good afternoon to all of you. Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, and a warm welcome to this 30th in the series webinar on a very important topic today, innovative tools for improving governance, SDG goal number 16. Friends, this webinar, as you know, is being brought to you by Inclusive Human Resource Development Initiative, or IHRDI Foundation, which has been broadcasting webinars to you on very, very important topics since the last 30 Sundays. It all started with COVID, and it has sustained with all your support and your blessings. So, friends, as you know, that this topic today we'll be talking about some innovative tools that have come up to improve the governance in this country. I'll just like to take you back to to the year 1947 when India attained independence, and we thought that the dream of the country of our dreams will be there once we achieve independence. But somehow many positive things came about also, in the sense that uh, we got our constitution, which was one of the best constitution, one of the most comprehensive constitution that the world has seen, and it has been a harbinger to provide inputs to various other constitutions, including the Constitution of South Africa also. So, friends, uh, many developments came around in the field of health, in the field of education. We became self-sufficient, and the best part is that we were able to sustain our democratic system, which nobody thought that India would have been able to support and sustain during the last 73, 75 years. Though we had certain glitches, but we were able to support our, independent, democratic, and a sovereign system as such. But having said that, wherein on one hand side we were doing well in nuclear research, in atomic research, also in connecting the country, even in building infrastructure. But on other hand side, friends, if you see, so the Human Development Index, India ranks very, very poorly. In the Transparency International Index, India ranks poorly. In the ease of doing business, we are quite lagging. In the ease of starting business, we are lagging. In the Even in the happiness index, we are far away. Even hunger index, even the poverty index, we are very much behind as such. So during these 73 to 75 years, we have done a few things right, but we should have, or we could have done a few things even better, which we could not do. And friends, as you know, that in democracy, the best part is that even when things start falling apart, somebody will come up, or some institution will come up, whether it will be from the government side, or it will be from the public, or NGOs, or civil societies, even enlightened citizens. They will come up, and they will provide enlightenment to the entire country as such. So the system which was moving towards opaqueness, which was moving towards being non-transparent, which was moving towards corruption, which was moving towards harassment, red tapeism, that system started off with some agitations by a few people, which led to the right to information. Similarly, many other new reforms, which I would say came around. Apart from right to information, we have right to services, which was, the act was passed by various states of the country. Then you had the ombudsman, which we term as the Lokpal in our country. That came up. The reforms in electoral, the reforms in election came up around when Mr. T.N. Session was the chief election commissioner of this country. Liberalization, privatization, globalization happened to improve how the country will move forward in economic terms. So, friends, lot many reforms have come up. Lot many developmental issues have come up over the period of time. Some have done so well, some have not been done so well. They are either in the process, or they are doing well, but something keeps on coming. And if we talk about the reforms, I mean, then we could talk and talk on all these aspects. So today, friends, we'll be focusing on financial reforms that came around in this country after independence. Especially, this is a cult of the last a few years, wherein three very, very important reforms in the financial administration of country came around. Wherein one was about how you tax your people, or in terms of indirect taxation, and how you collect your taxation. So this is reform. which I would say, and which generally many of the financial economists would say, that they are one of the most important financial reforms that the country has witnessed after 1947 is the advent of GST, or goods and service tax, in this country. This is one reform. Other reform has come up in how the government procures its goods, how the government procures its articles, whatever is required. So that reform came in the way of by the way of government e-marketplace, or GEM, that is known as. And the third important reform that has come up is the way how the government accounts its financial aspects in terms of its what comes out and what goes in. So they have set up a portal by the name of Public Financial Management System. So, friends, to discuss these three important financial reforms, rather, I would say, just to sensitize all of you to these three important financial reforms, we have today three very eminent personalities with us: Mr. Mustan Singh Chambial, Mr. Kush Tyagi, and Mr. Jaswinder Singh. Just a brief introduction about the three panelists. Mr. Mustan Singh Chambial is a chartered accountant by profession, and he promoted the chartered accountancy firm by the name of MS Chambial and Company. He is one person who is, so well versed in his own domain. Apart from accountancy, apart from doing his bit in terms of financial aspect, he's very passionate about academics also, on various issues like GST, taxation, economic reforms, etc. So welcome, Mr. Chambial, to this podium, and thanks to you for joining this. The second panelist, my dear friends, is Mr. Kush Tyagi. Mr. Kush Tyagi is a business facilitator, government electronic marketplace, which is a institution of Government of India, and he is in charge of four states, three states and a union territory: Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, and Ladakh. And he is the one who's guiding these four governments on various issues regarding procurement under GEM portal. The third, welcome, Mr. Tyagi, to this podium, and many thanks for accepting our invitation on this count. The third panelist, my dear friends, is Mr. Jaswinder Singh. Mr. Singh is presently working as Senior Accounts Officer, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. He is the one who is responsible for, both sensitizing the state governments to come out with how the accountancy part, in terms of it's the merger, basically the marriage between accountancy on one hand and the ICT, or information communication technology, on the other hand, to bring about real-time settlement of dues as such. Welcome, Mr. Jaswinder Singh, on this podium, and I hope all the three panelists would enlighten and enrich you on these three aspects. Though I know the limitations are that the time period that we have is short, and generally, we have two sessions, or rather three sessions on each of the topics that I have taken. But my issue while I was designing this course was to sensitize you on three aspects, because I think government people would be knowing about government e-marketplace and PFMS, but those people who are not in the government domain, they might not be aware. But just to make you aware about all this, and then once you say that it is all right, then you can further on your own also, you can go and search about the topic, or otherwise we can, later on, because this, with your support, if this series is continuing, we can have, full-fledged session on one of these topics some other day. So friends, not taking much long time, I would request now Mr. Mustan Singh to come up and speak about goods and service tax, how it came around, some history, and how it has impacted the life, and what needs further to be done. Being a practitioner, chartered accountant, he knows the nuts and bolts, and he knows where the shoe pinches. So welcome, Mustanji, and the stage is all yours now.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjeev ji. I extend my thanks to your organization for giving me a platform to discuss my thoughts with the uh, participant who came across from entire country, different part of the country, and I also welcome my counterpart, co-speaker, Mr. Tyagi ji and Mr. Jaswinder ji. And the topic which has been allocated to me is goods and services tax. So. Uh, it will be, as rightly said by Mr. Chatterjee, that it will be injustice to uh, uh, for the session which has been allotted GST, goods and services tax. It has been more than around 3 years that we are facing this issue day and night, and still it needs more couple of years to settle down. So basically, what are the positive things of this act? We will start with those acts. One of the major thing is that while doing our businesses, whenever a businessman would like to start up any entity, whether trading or manufacturing, he have to search in for the taxation system which is prevalent in that particular state. Now, after GST, he don't need to search for the tax, because the tax slabs are were different in the older regime. They were not uniform. If the computer which I am buying here in Chandigarh, and if I buy that same in Tamil Nadu, it might have been at a tax at a different rate in the earlier regimes. This is the one unique feature of this law, that the rates which has been defined, that are uniform in across the territorial jurisdiction of India, wheresoever the GST law applies. Another thing is that there was, being a chartered accountant, I am a service provider. Like there are many people who are service providers, they were buying goods and they were not able to take the benefit of taxes while giving their outputs services, especially in the case of goods. So now there is passing of the taxes from one to another. So similarly, it happens when a service provider is providing services, so he is able to take the benefit of input taxes in terms of goods or services which he has availed during the provision of services. So this is another positive thing which had happened with this act. And there was one mystery which was going in the earlier regimes, that there are certain things which we are not able to classify them either as goods or services. Say there was issues like real estate sector, there was issue in software industry, so there were some issues. So when this law came, then there was a definition which was given, there was goods or services or both, because whatsoever happen, it happens according to the past. They have to take a benchmark and benchmark by the past, and in past we have the laws where certain categories of services, or we can say supplies, were terms either as goods or services. So it has been defined as goods or services. But while streamlining this law, it has been categorized in one part. Either they are goods or services. There is nothing like goods or services. So this particular thing had happened. Now I would like to travel you through one presentation. So
Yeah,
in the
it's
pardon. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah, it's showing now. I'm just informing you.
Okay. So in this new regime, there is a word. There is no goods or no service word has been used. The word which has been used categorically is supply. So everything which is supply is taxable. So here, if I am deliberating on some topic, then I am supplying my services to you. And even if you are getting the food in the morning, paranthas in the morning, that is also a supply. Even a teacher who is teaching in the school or college, that teacher is also supplying. But when we see this definition, we can classify everything as a supply, and everything become within the ambit of this word, and everything needs to be taxable. But there are certain exceptions which excludes. So say an example, you are doing a job you are also supplying your services and your employer is paying you for those services. But that has been categorically excluded in from the taxable regime. Employer, wherever there is a employer-employee relationship, it has been excluded. So to be a supply, there need to be four things. It should be provided by a taxable person. You should not provide services from yourself to yourself. There should be another person who is providing services, and it should be in the taxable territory. Taxable territory can either be uh, it's not the geographical area, it is a taxable territory. If a person who is sitting in an aeroplane and just has traveling above the jurisdictional boundary of India for a 30 minutes, say an example, taking a flight from Delhi to Mumbai, and during that flight they had a one meeting discussion, and he charges a fees of 2 lakhs rupees for that meeting, then very much that particular supply is taxable in the course or furtherance of business. Then this is the one important aspect in the course and furtherance of business, that everything is not taxable. Only those things are taxable which are in the course and furtherance of business. You are getting nasta in the morning, breakfast in the morning, that is not in the course and furtherance of business. But the same thing you are getting from some hotel, then it is a taxable because it's in the course and furtherance of business for a consideration. Another thing is it should be for consideration, but there are certain exceptions where the things without consideration are also treated as supply. So these are the things which are coming, and there are two aspects: intrastate and interstate supplies. Interstate and interstate. So why this provision has to be incorporated in this law? Because every state has its own resources to meet their liabilities. So to meeting these liabilities, because this is a law whereby uh, we have to collect all the states on one ground, and this intrastate supply is when the purchase and sale happens within the geographical boundaries of that particular state. And interstate supply is the supply when the supply takes place from the geographical boundaries of one state to another state. But there are certain exceptions. Suppose in Mohali there is an SEZ, and the supply happens from Ludhiana to Mohali in that particular SEZ. Then fulfilling the criteria of geographical boundary, that supply will not be treated as intrastate, that will be treated as interstate. That is one exception. So in case of intrastate supply, there will be levied local taxes. So taxes are rate will be the same, 18%, 12%, but that need to be divided into two parts. One part will be for state and one part will be for center. And there is another concept in this scenario, B2C, bill to ship to concept. In case of bill to ship to concept, suppose if one person who is sitting in Ladakh, he wants 20 computers from me, from Chandigarh. He orders me, he make me call that I need 20 computers. I checked with my store, but there was no systems available with me. I had only 3 systems. So being a businessman, I can't say no because I am doing a business. But I checked with my counterpart in Chandigarh, in Ludhiana, in Amritsar, see, in Pathankot. I got the availability of systems in Pathankot. Now, there were 2 methods of doing the trade. One, I will simply say that guy in the Pathankot just deliver those systems in Ladakh. So in that case, I will not be getting any money because he is directly sending those systems. But to facilitate here, the concept is bill to ship to. I will tell him that you will bill to me here in Chandigarh and shipping will be made to Ladakh, so that Pathankot people will be sending invoice to me and I will be making payment to him because he is my seller and I am his purchaser. But for Ladakh person, I am his seller and he is my purchaser. So there will be 2 transactions. So the invoice which will be sent to the Ladakh person will be from my company only. Is there any confusion in this point?
No
Okay.
confusion, clear ji.
Okay, going ahead, there are certain recent reforms I would like to discuss them first. Recently, government had introduced from 1st January QMPS schemes, quarterly payment, QP, quarterly compliance, and monthly payment. So in that scheme, in order to facilitate the MSME sector, what government had came with an idea whereby they said to the traders who had a turnover of less than 5 CR, they should make payment every month, but they have to fill their returns quarterly. So they need not to file the returns every month. Another one of the major areas which has been covered from 1st January 2021 is that e-invoicing. A lot of issues happened that there were many frauds which happened, and the people who used this law to make some false statements. So to curb those people and to control this miscompliance and wrongly issue of refunds, the government had came up with those people who had a turnover of around more than 100 CRs in a financial year. They have to compulsorily now generate their invoices from GSTN portal. So there will be the barcode system. So they have to feed their detail in portal, and a unique reference number will be allotted to them from that portal. After that only they shall be able to issue their invoice. Those who are issuing their invoice and they have a turnover of more than 100 CR, so they will be liable for the penalties and all those compliances. Another major reform in this act is that which will sooner be applied. There will be a system of machines that will be inserted in transportation mechanism, and they will be just like that FASTag. So they will keep on tracking the vehicle who is moving, and department will be having all the details of the vehicle, whether that vehicle is going against one e-way bill for one time or two times or three times. So there is another mechanism which has been into e-way bill. E-way bill basically is the bill, the person who is transporting goods from one place to another, and the value of goods is more than 50,000. They have to compulsorily submit all the details of the items which were transported from one place to another. Whether they are selling or not selling, that's not an issue. There is a transportation. For the transportation from one place to another, then they have to compulsory fill the details in e-way bill. And another is the settlement of taxes. So there are many things that has been covered under this act. So sir, how much time we have more?
Chambial ji, you can take maybe 10 minutes more.
10 minutes more. So this is a very unique law, and there are many things but still there are many problems, many issues which are teething problems. The major issue which I feel is that the government is not able to completely understand this law, and they were making frequent changes in this law. That is a little bit disturbing on the part of a businessman. They have to shift from one system to another, but overall the shifting of taxes, which is automatically, which the credit, earlier we have to go to the department, we have to take the C form, F form, H form, and it takes around 4-3-5 years to take those forms. Now there is no system of taking any form, and even if you had any refund, there are refunds available. If you are doing an export, so you can take refunds. Either you can pay taxes and take refund of the taxes which you have paid, or you just apply for LUT and may supply your goods without paying any taxes. Or in that case also, you can take refund of inputs which you had taken during that particular transaction. So you can apply for the refund of those taxes, and it is a tax savvy system. So if you know the law, if you know the integrities of law, you can file your returns. You need not have to go to the department every day, sitting and standing there and waiting for the officers to come, है ना, just to get that done. So all the forms, all the particulars, all the procedures are through the medium of electronic mode. And another thing is that there are different systems for different but the main feature is that now, earlier there is no sync between two departments. There are two departments. This is one central board of indirect taxes and central board of direct taxes. Now those who are doing business this year, you might have seen in while filing your ITR, when you were filing your ITR, there was in 26 years, there was a column where the entire sale which you had reported in your GST return, that figures were reflecting in your income tax return also. So there is a direct sync. So you have to be thoroughly aware about the law. So the data which you are reporting in one law and another law, there should be same. There should be sync. You should not report in one law that you had a turnover of 100 crores and in another law you say 50 lakhs. So there should be a sync between both. And this is one very historic reform which has happened. And another thing is that in this law, the unique feature is that the amendments which need to be made, the government need not have to wait for the another monsoon session or some another session to pass those amendments. They had kept those power with the council. There is a council, and in the council the participation is of every state. Whether they put their points or not, that's not an issue. It's not the only one person who is making the statements that it is a participative. There is a some sort of democratic system which is in governance over here. They had some voting rights. The chairman has 1/3 voting right. The rest of the people have 2/3 voting rights. But majority of decisions which takes place, that has to be taken with the consent of at least 75% of the present members who are there in that meeting, and those members who give assent to that particular note. So this is all about GST. It's a very good reform in terms of another more important point is that whenever you come to know about any notice, now the government had introduced UDIN number also. So if you are doing any business, if somebody approaches to you with some notice, do check that particular notice has been allotted under UDIN or not. If that notice doesn't contain UDIN, then that is not a valid notice. And if you want to revoke that notice, you can simply revoke that notice, and you are not liable to comply with that notice. So all this from my side on this topic.
Right. Thank you, Mustanji. And I think once we finish off with all the three panelists, then we'll have a very interesting discussion on the issues involved. I have requested the audience to post certain questions if they have certain queries on the chat box. So you kindly also see I have posted 2-3 questions, and I request others also to post. And in the meanwhile, if you feel like that they belong to you, so you can answer therein also, or we can answer at the end also.
Yeah, exactly, sir.
So thanks a lot for this very enlightening information about what GST is all about. Now I request the second speaker of the day, Mr. Kush Tyagi, who will be enlightening you about what is the GEM or Government E-Marketplace, and how it came around, and what are the issues involved, and then how it is improving the governance in the state governments and with regard to financial aspects of the Government of India. So welcome Mr. Kush on this podium, and many thanks for accepting our invitation. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Sajeev.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I welcome all the panelists, Mr. Mastan Saab and Jassi Singh ji. And I also welcome all the other participants who have taken out time from their busy schedules on a Sunday and joined us for this webinar. And I would straight away jump to a presentation, a small presentation which I have started. GEM, like GST, is also a very vast topic, and we would require quite a lot of time to cover the complete session. But however, given the time which we have, I have prepared a small presentation and will try to cover up all the aspects of GEM as much as possible. So without further ado, we'll just start with the presentation. I hope my screen is visible to everybody. Chadda ji?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, it's visible, ji.
Thank you, thank you. So I'll just start with a small introduction about GEM. GEM was started on 9th August 2016, and it was started with the motto in mind that all the government procurement should be done through a single portal or a single place. Before that, what was happening was, and still today also, a lot of government bodies, be it central ministries, state ministries, PSUs, and other departments, they are all buying on their own. They used to buy on their own. Central government would have their own procurement portal, CPP portal. Then states would have their own procurement portals. Apart from that, there were also tenders which were placed in the open market through newspapers and other things. And all of this would often confuse the vendor and sometimes the departments also. For every small thing, they would have to go to a certain portal or probably go to the newspaper and print it, publish all of those things. There would be a timeline involved. Then all the people who were participating would send their documents. Those would have to be evaluated, and that would create a long time. Any small tender would generally take at least 3 months to culminate. So keeping that in mind, and on the other hand, also seeing the IT infrastructure of the government at that point of time, was the government found that even a small government office would have the basic necessity of a computer and an internet connection. So to increase the ease of procurement, GEM was launched. And procurement is a very major aspect of every department. I'm sure people who have joined from the government bodies would agree with me that procurement, be it of even a small amount, is a very important matter whenever it comes to any government department. And so to facilitate that in a much better sense, we, Government of India, launched the portal of GEM on 9th August 2016, and this is under Ministry of Commerce. It is a Section 8 company which was started by Ministry of Commerce. It is a special purpose vehicle. Rather, we call GEM SPV, Government E-Marketplace. Special purpose vehicle is the complete name of our department. And after nearly a year, the government saw that the portal is working very well. It has reached quite a bit of acceptance and ease of doing procurement in the government side. So to increase its power, there was a rule 149 in the General Financial Rules, that is the GFR, and it was now edited to read that procurement of goods and services by ministries or departments will be mandatory for goods or services available on GEM. Basically, now it was made mandatory for all the departments to go and buy products and services which are available on GEM from the portal only and not from outside. And this gave GEM a lot of say in the procurement scenario in Government of India. And over the years has led to a lot of prominence given to GEM above other procurement methods. If I talk about the aims of GEM, we basically have 3 aims: efficiency, transparency, and inclusiveness. Efficiency, If I talk about the erstwhile procurement scenario, it would take anywhere from 3 months to 6 months for a buying or a procurement to finalize. But on GEM, you can do that process within a timeline of 15 days. That is how efficient the system has become, and we are continuously trying to evolve the system so that it keeps up with the current market and the changing rules and regulations in the government of India. In fact, currently we are sitting at GEM 4.0. That is the fourth version of GEM which has come up. And over the years, when we started, we were at 1.0, GEM version 1, and now we are at version 4.0. And the plan to move to GEM 5.0 to enhance GEM has already started. So we continuously work to make the system more efficient. And then secondly, transparent also. The system is so transparent that whatever transaction is being done, the complete details of those transactions are saved online, regardless of that officer being in charge of that post now or not. Maybe that particular officer must have moved on, transferred to somewhere else, or probably retired. Still, the details would be saved in the system for any officer to come or the audit agencies to come and check. And lastly, if I talk about inclusiveness, obviously inclusiveness is targeted towards both the users, that is the buyer, which is the government supplier, government bodies which are procuring, and the sellers, which are the vendors who are providing their various goods and services. And inclusiveness is more so targeted, what I feel is towards the vendors, because we want the system to be so robust that all the needs of the buyers are met through the portal itself. Now, if the portal, once on one hand we have made it mandatory for the departments to come and buy through the portal, but if there are no sellers, then the portal itself will fail. So to see that and to enhance that, we have made the portal very simple for sellers to register, come online, start selling their products and services on the portal itself. And then a lot of liberty and flexibility is given to the buyers, that is the government department. They can choose various methods of procurement available at one portal only. Earlier, if you see, if you take any other portal, if I talk about the PPP portal, CPP portal, then there's the only option of uploading tenders. That is the only option available there, and that is generally the mode for all the procurement portals, be it state or center. But GEM has made some more changes, giving further options for a buyer to proceed with their procurement cycle. Now, this is a footprint which we have had across the length and breadth of India. You can see from the map that 35 states and union territories have signed MOUs with GEM and have been working in adopting GEM for their complete procurement needs. So you can see from the map that nearly all of India, barring a few states, everything is now on the procurement end, moving towards the GEM side. Apart from that, we have made a very healthy environment by bringing across various partners, be it in the government side, private side, or the financial institutions. If I talk about the government side, then we have tied up with Income Tax Department, Ministry of Company Affairs, PFMS. The next speaker who's going to be Sir Jesse Singh Ji is from PFMS only, and we have tied up with PFMS also for the procurement needs. Then Ministry of MSME, Aadhaar Department, all of these are tied up with GEM so that we could give a real-time usage database for anybody who's registering. Like, I would give a small example that since we have tied up with the Income Tax Department, now any vendor who's coming and registering, they would have to give their income tax details, and the system would at the same time check it with the Income Tax Department, because both the servers are integrated with each other. So now a vendor cannot lie about their turnover, because they have filled certain amount of income tax return last year, and that has when they input it in the system automatically verifies it with the IT department, and if there is some discrepancy, then it will not be accepted. So like other reforms like this has also been enabled easily through the use of technology. Then if I talk about industry associations, as you can see on the left hand side, all big industry association and the small ones also we are trying to tie up with, like CII, IMA, FICCI, PhD Chamber of Commerce, Competition Commission of India, ASSOCHAM, and others we have tied up with, so that our reach, see, the government side, the reach is very easy for us because we are already a government department and it is easy for us to reach within our fraternity. But we also need the vendors to come more and more on board, and so keeping that goal in mind, we have tied up with these industrial associations so that we can spread the word about GeM easily, and what new changes are coming into place or whatever we are planning to go ahead, that all can be easily, that information can be disseminated between these different vendors. And lastly, procurement cannot be complete without the financial implication in place, and to smoothen that, we have tied up with various financial institutions and banks so that this becomes very easy for any vendor or buyer to come and do that on the portal. Now these are a few statistics, and these are, I picked them up today in the morning only, and this will tell you that the amount of reach, success, depth or coverage, whatever you can call it, that GeM has reached in a short time period of nearly 4.5 years. So number of buyer departments, and they comprise of all kinds of departments, central, state, PSUs, state PSUs, and autonomous bodies. All of them are covered under this buyers, and there are nearly 50,000 different buyers which are buying on the portal currently. If I talk about sellers and service providers, they are nearly 10 lakh in numbers, 9,86,539 to be exact. Different products which are registered on GeM, and you can see it is a humongous amount, 21,35,000 different products are registered on the GeM portal. So that this would give you an idea of what all GeM is capable of, what all things are being sold on GeM. In fact, I often give examples that if you are sitting in a room and you see all around you, I'm talking about government offices, not our homes. But in any government office, whatever you can see in the room is available on the GeM portal. So we on the portal we are selling a small thing like a pen to a large thing like a, let us say, ambulance also. So everything from a pen to an ambulance is available on the portal. Total number of orders are upwards of 55.5 lakhs, and the transaction value we have touched around 80,242 crores till date, and we plan to touch, if possible, nearly 1 lakh crore this financial year. And in the coming financial year, GeM plans to, rather I would say Government of India plans that around 8 to 9 lakh crores transaction value of the total procurement of India should be through the GeM portal. And to further, those statistics are probably more towards the government, to the buyer side. These statistics will give you an analysis of the seller also, what and how they are benefiting from the portal. So product categories are nearly 13,000 product categories we have. Those 1 lakh products are spread across the 13,000 categories. And then we have a very robust and growing service category also, wherein we have 178 different service categories, which further have subcategories available under them. Then service offerings which we have are nearly 72,000 number, and MSC seller, that is micro and small enterprises. Those sellers and service providers are numbering in 4,45,000. And the total order value on GeM which they are generating as of now is 57.84% of the total, that was 80,242 crores. So you can see that even the small vendors, because one of the biggest problems which small vendors used to have and they used to complain was that it was very difficult to engage in government procurement because there were big players available, and they generally you were not very happy with the competition and would find ways or means to stop small vendors from coming and participating in government tenders. But since GEM has come, and you can see from the data available that the small vendors are the ones who are getting the majority of the order value. So this has also given a boost to Make in India, and local vendors who are now coming and participating in the procurement cycle, which they never had done before. Some of the key advantages of the system is, first of all, if I talk about efficiency, it is a single window for procuring all goods and services. And in procurement, there are three major heads under which we procure: goods, services, and works. And out of those three, two are already covered under GEM. And when I say covered, I mean that most of the items under goods and a lot of services are now available, and anybody can go ahead and buy from a single portal, and the seller also has to register at a single window only. Secondly, the process is simplified, and more than simplified, I would say it is homogeneous. Any kind of buying, the process remains the same. So for a buyer also, it becomes easier as the time passes because they know that the process will remain the same. And for a seller also, participating in any tender would be easy because the process remains the same. So earlier what would happen is, let us say I'm a small vendor in Punjab and I'm participating in a tender from autonomous body, also from central government, also from state government, all three of them, and probably a PSU also. So all four of them would have probably different rules and regulations when it came to procurement. You might have to get empaneled someplace, then you might have to produce some kind of security somewhere. All of those things were there, and it would cause a lot of problems. Sometimes this would deter the vendors from going ahead and participating in tenders because a lot of paperwork and was involved, and the processes were also different. Now it is homogeneous and simplified. Obviously, the first time we use a software, it becomes a little difficult, but as time goes by and the process remains the same, it is very easy for any person to go and use the software. Then, apart from that, a very important aspect is of GEM is the data which is available, and both in real time and historical. As in, right now, if I am a seller on GEM, I can go and look what my competitors are selling, what is the price, what are the products they are selling in my particular category. And if I am a buyer, I can also go online and see if I wanted to buy a laptop, then what is the price of that particular configuration which I'm looking at. And that data is easily available. Apart from that, historical data, and like what we bought 2 years ago, and I'm sure all the government persons who are here would recall that what we used to do and we will still do is we'll ask the peon to get the particular file which will be lying somewhere in storage, and then look at the data which we had done a couple of years ago. All of that process and time is now gone because we can access that data within a click of a button. And all of these things lead to better budget management from our side. Then transparency, I've already covered a little bit, but I'll further enhance that. The audit trail which the system generates would include nearly everything: what is bought, at what specifications, from which person, by which buyer, what price, what place. All of these things are stored in the system, and it's easier for an auditing body or even internal body which requires the data to access it at any time. And if I talk about economy, then aggregation of demand has led to better financial and non-financial offerings. That means we have also, if I talk about GEM, we have a lot of categories have shown drastic discounts being given to the government buyers. Apart from that, a non-financial uh, uh, a non-financial addition to the system is the time which has been saved. Earlier, as I told you, that the time required was a lot, but now it has gone down a lot. Then on the vendor side also, faster account settlement has given a lot of benefit for vendors. That is why they are attracted to GeM to be a part of the process, so that they know that their payments will not be stuck up for long. And we are uh, working towards this goal to see that all of our timelines are met, be it from the buyer side or the vendor side. And all of this leads to a better price discovery, because when I know that I'm getting easy access to government departments, my payment is now secure and timely, and the orders also which I'm getting are very consistent. So I would definitely give a better price, and this would in the end help us both as a buyer and a seller. This is the basic structure of GeM from a buyer side. We have a primary user and we have a secondary users, which are of three kinds: buyer, consignee, and payment officers. Primary user is generally the head of the department, and I'll not cover it in depth. I'll just go about a few details of it. Primary user is generally the head of the department, and under him we have buyer, consignee, and payment officers. And I'm sure the name only clarifies: the buyer is the one who buys, consignee is the one who receives the material and does an inspection of it, and finally the payment officers are the ones who pay. And depending on the payment method, if it is PFMS, we'll have to create a DDO. Otherwise, for all other payment methods, we have something called a PO, that is a pay and accounts officer. These are the multiple procurement methods on GeM. Firstly, it is direct purchase, that is till 25,000 rupees. The government department can go online and buy anything. Till 25,000 essentially, and a lot of people call GeM as the Amazon of government, and which is to an extent quite true, because we are also, unlike, I would not call us a tender portal, we are more like a marketplace model which exists. And marketplace, Amazon is also marketplace, Flipkart is a marketplace. All of these things are online. These e-commerce giants are marketplaces, and similarly we are also on that model only, but not completely like that. But till 25,000 you can call us a complete marketplace. Buyer can go online and place an order of 25,000 to any vendor, be it L1, that is the lowest one, or be it the H1. That 25,000 should be the total cost of the order. Then from 25,000 to 5 lakhs, we have something called L1 buying, wherein 3 different manufacturers or 3 different brands, if you can call them, their prices have to be compared on the system itself, and the system basis the comparison will suggest an L1, that is the lowest one, and you can place the order to that L1. Above 5 lakhs, we have something called bid and reverse auction. These are the 2 options available. You can use either of them or both of them simultaneously. Bid is similar to a tender, wherein first you would do the technical evaluation. The technical bid will be submitted to us, and then we would do the open the price bid. And reverse auction is completely opposite of an auction. The lowest bidder, the person who has bid the lowest, will get the order. In an auction, the person who has placed the highest bid will get the particular product or order. In reverse auction, the person who has placed the lowest bid will get that order. And lastly, we have something called PAC buying, or proprietary article certificate is also what we call it, wherein the department can choose a single brand or a particular model number of that single brand also when they are going for their procurement needs. Some of the key advantages for buyers are it's an end-to-end system from registration to payment, and soon all of the payments on GeM will be moved online only. As of now, they will, except from PFMS and GPA, there are no other methods to pay online, but soon we are coming up with a system so that all of the payment goes online. It is the ease of use and the transparency are a big part of the GeM system, and a lot of people have started using GeM because the ease of use and also the transparency involved. We have a very good compare, search and buy facility, which it gives results in a very less time and is very time saving. Then I've already discussed that we have a huge and very rich listing of products and services which are available on the system. Then we have a dashboard which is very easy to use when you have to look at different datas or see your own procurement in the past or what is the procurement pattern currently. A lot of this data is available on your dashboard. Then the order process has also been redesigned so that be it the central departments or state or autonomous bodies or PSUs, all of them can easily participate. Now we have also given the option to provide multiple consignee locations and quantity within a single order, so that sitting at one place you can order for all of your offices spread across the state or spread across the length and breadth of India. Then bunching of products and services is now completely open. You can create a bunch of different products or different services however you like it, and instead of placing multiple orders, you can place one single order of all the product and services. And to know the price reasonability, we have upgraded our price trend business analytic tool. You can get the real-time analytics of the reasonability of the products. Similarly, on the seller side also, we have the option wherein a seller can, if they want to use a single account on their own, or if they want, they can create secondary users under them also, who can, on behalf of them, participate in bid, do a product upload, process orders, or do payment confirmation if the owner wants it to be so. And if I talk about the key advantages for sellers, then the biggest key advantage to sellers is it has direct access to all the government departments. Instead of going to different kinds of portals or different departments individually, he has an access to all the government departments, and then it's a one-stop shop for all kinds of products and services both. Apart from that, price is not fixed. Rather, I would enhance and say that we allow the vendor to change the price, also to select the location where they want to sell and the quantity which they want to sell. That is the minimum order which they want to pick up. For a pencil vendor, it could be something like 100, but someone who's selling an electronic item like printer, they would be ready to sell one single unit also. So that option is available to them. Or apart from that, where they want to sell, I am a small vendor in Chandigarh and I want to only sell in this particular pin code, that option is there. Or if I want to sell in only 2-3 districts in Punjab and Haryana and Shimla, that is also there. I want to select whole state, it's up to me. I want to select whole of India, it is up to me. So therein it is very flexible and dynamic, and the pricing too can change from order to order basis, or on a real-time basis. If you want to change, you can change the pricing also. It is not fixed. Then we have developed a strong vendor rating system which functions to enhance the working of the vendors who are involved on the portal. Now we have given the functionality to sellers that they can also suggest what products need to be added to the portal. Then a dashboard similar to one which was given to a buyer is also given to a seller, so that they can monitor all of their orders, their supplies and payments. And then we have news and event section for regular updates, because seller system is very robust and it is continuously changing. These versions which I told about, 1, 2, 3, 4, are the big changes which happen, but otherwise small changes regularly keep on happening on the portal. So they can easily get knowledge about that from this. And lastly, all the new product categories are now also available under new on GeM. So this was just a gist of what GeM was all about. And as I told you all that it would require a lot more time to explain the whole process, but I tried to do my best in the time given to me. And thank you, Dr. Shah, and it is up to you now.
Okay, right. Thank you, Mr. Kush, for a very comprehensive presentation and a talk on the government electronic marketplace. I think many of the queries that we had in mind have been answered, but a few of them we'll take it, once we finished with the third panelist. So I request now, not taking much long, Mr. Jaswinder Singh to talk about the public financial management system. ਵੈਲਕਮ ਜਸਵਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਬੋਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਮੈਨੇਜਮੈਂਟ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਤੇ। ਜਸਵਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਿਊਟਡ ਹੋ। ਜਸਵਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਯੂ ਆਰ ਮਿਊਟਡ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਨਾਓ ਇਟਸ ਓਕੇ।
Thank you, Dr. Chadda ji. I welcome all the participants, panelists, Mustan Singh ji, Kushi Tyagi ji, all the participants, viewers, for participating in the session, who spare their precious time on busy Sunday. So we will talk about PFMS, Public Financial Management System. What is PFMS? Why such system is needed in India? What are the objectives of PFMS? How it works and what are the benefits, how PFMS is beneficial for India and the people. So first of all, what is PFMS, Public Financial Management System? PFMS is a central plan scheme of the Ministry of Finance, Department of Expenditure, Government of India. It is started in 2008 and its mandate was announced by the Honorable Finance Minister during the budget speech during 2008. Expenditure Finance Committee of the Planning Commission approved the implementation of PFMS. So PFMS पब्लिक फाइनेंशियल मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम 1 अप्रैल 2008 से शुरू हुआ था। पहले इसका नाम CPSMS या सेंट्रल प्लान स्कीम मॉनिटरिंग सिस्टम था। जैसे कि नाम से ही क्लियर है, इसमें पहले सिर्फ प्लान टाइप की जो स्कीम्स है वो इंक्लूड की गई थी। उसका नाम भी CPSMS या सेंट्रल प्लान स्कीम मॉनिटरिंग सिस्टम था। तो जितनी भी गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की प्लान स्कीम थी वो सारी इसमें इंक्लूड की थी। ये जो पोर्टल है वो NIC द्वारा डेवलप किया गया है, जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की इंफॉर्मेटिक एजेंसी है। टेक्निकल सपोर्ट सारी PFMS की जो है NIC से है। 1 अप्रैल 2014 को इसमें गवर्नमेंट की हर तरह की स्कीम जो है वो इंक्लूड कर ली गई थी, चाहे वो प्लान थी या नॉन प्लान थी। पहले प्लान नॉन प्लान स्कीम का कल्चर था, अब रेवेन्यू और कैपिटल टाइप की आ गई है। तो इसमें हर तरह की गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की स्कीम, वो किसी भी मिनिस्ट्री की हो, किसी भी टाइप की हो, वो 1 अप्रैल 2014 से इसमें इंक्लूड की गई है और इसका नाम भी पब्लिक फाइनेंशियल मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम या PFMS रख दिया है। PFMS की जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है वो कंट्रोलर जनरल ऑफ अकाउंट्स वो कर रहा है। कंट्रोलर जनरल ऑफ अकाउंट्स एक अपेक्स अकाउंटिंग अथॉरिटी है गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ एक्सपेंडिचर। तो पूरे कंट्री में जो PFMS की इम्प्लीमेंटेशन का जिम्मा है वो कंट्रोलर जनरल ऑफ अकाउंट्स या CGA को दिया गया है। सबसे पहले हम ये डिस्कस करें कि ये क्यों इस सिस्टम की जरूरत पड़ी है, इसके ऑब्जेक्टिव्स क्या हैं। तो सबसे पहले जो मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव्स है वो है ट्रैकिंग ऑफ फंड्स। तो पहले गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की कोई भी स्कीम किसी भी तरह की, चाहे वो बेनिफिशियरी के लिए हो या वेंडर के लिए हो या इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के लिए हो, किसी भी सेक्टर में उसका हमें स्कीम तो अनाउंस गवर्नमेंट कर देती थी, मगर उसका जो रिजल्ट है वो हमें नहीं दिखता था फील्ड में, उसकी मॉनिटरिंग नहीं हो पाती थी। तो होता क्या था कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया जो फंड है वो रिलीज कर देती थी, चाहे वो स्कीम ट्रेजरी के थ्रू या स्टेट के थ्रू हो या डायरेक्ट किसी इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी के थ्रू हो। तो यहाँ थोड़ा सा मैं ब्रीफ कर दूं स्कीम्स के बारे में कि कैसे कैसे काम करती है। मेन स्कीम दो तरह की होती है गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की। एक तो सेंट्रल सेक्टर की स्कीम जो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट खुद इम्प्लीमेंट करवाती है एजेंसी से, इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी से। वो पैसा जो है उन स्कीम्स का सीधा गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया या मिनिस्ट्री से सीधा उस इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी के अकाउंट में आता है, उसके पास आता है, और वो एजेंसी फिर फर्दर पेमेंट करती है या उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करती है। और दूसरी तरह की स्कीम होती है सेंट्रली स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम। सेंट्रल स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम में कई बार 100% वो सेंटर से फंडेड होती है या कई बार उसमें कुछ स्टेट शेयर भी होता है। और सेंट्रली स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम जो है वो स्टेट के थ्रू इम्प्लीमेंट होती है। स्टेट का मतलब स्टेट ट्रेजरी या स्टेट फाइनेंस थ्रू। तो उस केस में मोस्टली क्या होता था कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया फंड दे देती थी स्टेट को, मगर फर्दर स्टेट अपनी इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी जो नीचे फील्ड ऑफिसर्स को फंड देने में बहुत देरी कर देती थी। तो कई बार तो इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी के पास फंड ही जो फरवरी या मार्च में आता था, तो वो इस सिचुएशन में नहीं होती थी कि इतना टाइम ही नहीं उसके पास होता था कि वो उस पर प्रॉपर खर्च कर सके। तो मोस्टली बेनिफिट लोगों तक नहीं पहुंच पाता था। तो ना तो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के पास कोई टूल ऐसा था कि वो मॉनिटर कर सके कि कितना एक्सपेंडिचर किस स्कीम में कहाँ इम्प्लीमेंट हुआ, कहाँ नहीं हुआ, कितना खर्चा हुआ, कितना नहीं हुआ, और स्कीम का रिजल्ट क्या है। इसलिए बहुत सी स्कीमें ऐसी हैं जो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने अनाउंस तो की है, इम्प्लीमेंट भी की है, मगर उनका रिजल्ट फील्ड में नहीं दिखता, जिससे कि पूरे देश की जो डेवलपमेंट है वो बहुत पीछे रह जाती है कि जब स्कीम ही इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं प्रॉपर होगी तो डेवलपमेंट कहाँ से दिखेगी। तो उसकी ट्रैकिंग के लिए ये मेन जो है सिस्टम डेवलप किया गया, पब्लिक फाइनेंशियल मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम। मेन इसमें जो मॉनिटरिंग है वो फंड की है, ट्रैकिंग है। इस सिस्टम में लेवल वाइज जैसे भी इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी किसी भी लेवल पे हो उसकी रजिस्ट्रेशन की जाती है, लिंक किया जाता है उसका बैंक अकाउंट, चाहे वो ट्रेजरी के थ्रू या डायरेक्ट फंडिंग हो। तो उस केस में उस एजेंसी का बैंक अकाउंट जो है वो इसमें लिंक किया जाता है। और जब भी कोई एजेंसी उसमें एक्सपेंडिचर करती है, कोई पेमेंट करती है, कोई बेनिफिट देती है, तो ऑटोमेटिकली वो सिस्टम में कैप्चर हो जाता है और सर्वर के थ्रू मिनिस्ट्री को पता चल जाता है। फंड की ट्रैकिंग हो जाती है कि वो फंड कहाँ पर है, कितना खर्च हुआ, कितना नहीं हुआ। मेन फंडिंग के दो रूट है। एक तो जैसे मैंने पहले बताया कि सेंट्रल सेक्टर की स्कीम में है, वो सीधा गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की मिनिस्ट्री से फंड इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी के अकाउंट में ट्रांसफर हो जाता है और इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी फिर उसकी पेमेंट कर दिया, फिर उस बेनिफिट पब्लिक को देती है। और दूसरा है ट्रेजरी रूट या सेंट्रल स्पॉन्सर स्कीम, वो ट्रेजरी के थ्रू पेमेंट आती है। वो जो स्टेट का फाइनेंस डिपार्टमेंट होता है वो सैंक्शन इशू करता है, फिर डीडीओ बिल रेज करता है ट्रेजरी में, ट्रेजरी फर्दर पेमेंट करती है या तो बेनिफिट के अकाउंट में बेनिफिशियर के, या फिर उस एजेंसी के बैंक अकाउंट में। तो सबसे मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव जो इसका है, ये ट्रैकिंग ऑफ फंड है। इससे गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया मॉनिटर कर सकती है कि किस स्कीम में किस एजेंसी तक कहाँ पैसा खर्च हुआ है, कितनी पेमेंट हुई है, कितनी बेनिफिट को पेमेंट हुई है। सेकेंडली, इसमें जो इंफॉर्मेशन है पीएफएमएस में, वो बैंक सर्वर से पीएफएमएस की इंटीग्रेशन कंप्लीट हो चुकी है सारी बैंकों से। तो जब भी कोई एजेंसी किसी स्कीम में इंप्लीमेंट करती है, एक्सपेंडिचर करती है, पेमेंट करती है, तो उसकी ऑनलाइन इंफॉर्मेशन बैंक सर्वर के थ्रू मिनिस्ट्री को पता चल जाती है। गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया उस स्कीम में बैंक बैलेंसेस भी जो देख सकती है, और उसके लिए जो फर्दर जो प्रोविजन है फंड की, फर्दर फंड्स की प्रोविजन, वो भी जस्ट इन टाइम मिनिस्ट्री कर देती है। जैसे सपोज कर लो किसी स्कीम में किसी एजेंसी को 100 करोड़ रुपया जो ग्रांट दी गई, उसने 100 करोड़ एक्सपेंडिचर कर लिया, तो मिनिस्ट्री एट द सेम टाइम उसको फर्दर जो फंड्स की प्रोविजन कर देगी। तो ऑटोमेटिकली सिस्टम मॉनिटर कर, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया मॉनिटर कर लेगी सिस्टम के थ्रू कि उसने कितना एक्सपेंडिचर कर लिया है। और जब उसने एक्सपेंडिचर कर लिया, सिस्टम में ऑनलाइन कर दिया, तो उसको नेक्स्ट फंड्स की प्रोविजन इमीडिएटली जस्ट इन टाइम गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया द्वारा कर दी जाएगी। तो तीसरा इसमें ये है, इसका ऑब्जेक्टिव ये है कि पहले जो डाटा होता था वो कोई भी स्कीम में इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी एक्सपेंडिचर करने के बाद यूटिलाइजेशन सर्टिफिकेट भेजती थी, वो फिर कंसोलिडेशन होकर मिनिस्ट्री के पास जाता था, उसमें टाइम गैप बहुत हो जाता था मिनिस्ट्री तक जाने में और उधर यूटिलाइजेशन में। तो उतने देर में मिनिस्ट्री को यही नहीं पता चलता था कि इसकी यूटिलाइजेशन क्या है। अब जो डाटा है, जब भी कोई एजेंसी, इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी इसमें एक्सपेंडिचर करेगी, पेमेंट करेगी, तो इमीडिएटली मिनिस्ट्री को डाटा दिख जाएगा और रियल टाइम डाटा होगा, वो फंड यूटिलाइजेशन की जो पता चल जाएगा। और जो फंड यूटिलाइजेशन है वो बैंक से ऑटो रिकंसाइल्ड होगी, क्योंकि जो बैंक सर्वर है वो पीएफएम से 100% इंटीग्रेटेड है, और वो जो डाटा होगा वो इनकी ट्रांजैक्शन पे बेस्ड होगा। तो इसलिए सबसे मेन जो ऑब्जेक्टिव इनके यही थे कि सब तो पहले ट्रैकिंग ऑफ फंड्स था, उसके बाद रियल टाइम डाटा था, और जस्ट इन टाइम फंड्स की रिलीजेस थी। पीएफएम से इम्प्लीमेंट होने से फर्क क्या हुआ, मेन बहुत सारी स्कीमों में बोगस जो बेनिफिशियरी थे उनको पेमेंट जा रही थी। जैसे स्कॉलरशिप में एक कॉलेज ने एक कैंडिडेट को एडमिशन दिखा दिया, उसको स्कॉलरशिप दे दिया, फिर दूसरे कॉलेज ने दिखा दिया। तो ऐसे बहुत सी बोगस जो बेनिफिशियरी थे वो हर स्कीम में ऐसे बहुत ज़्यादा गिनती में थे। तो पीएफएमएस होने से वो जो मॉनिटरिंग है वो सारी पॉसिबल हो पाई है। पीएफएमएस से पेमेंट के सिस्टम में जाए वो आधार एनेबल्ड भी है, बैंक अकाउंट एनेबल्ड भी है। अब एक बेनिफिशियरी का मल्टीपल अकाउंट तो हो सकता है, मगर आधार उसका यूनिक होगा। तो हर बैंक अकाउंट जो है उसके लिए आधार सीडर जो है मैंडेटरी किया गया है बेनिफिशियरी के लिए। तो वो मैंडेटरी होने की वजह से पीएफएमएस में जो डाटा बेस है वो ऑल इंडिया लेवल पे है। तो इसलिए उसमें कोई भी बेनिफिशियरी का जो आधार है वो दोबारा सीड नहीं हो सकता। अगर मल्टीपल बैंक भी है उसके, तो वो सिस्टम को बता देगा कि ये पहले ये इस आधार नंबर से लिंक्ड है। तो जितना भी बोगस बेनिफिशियरी है वो सारा इससे खत्म हो गया बहुत सारी स्कीमों में। और नियर अबाउट गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया का 40% जो खर्चा है, एक्सपेंडिचर है, वो कम हो गया है। एक्सपेंडिचर जो है एक तरह सेव हो गया है। तो बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट प्रोवर्ब है, मनी सेव्ड इज मनी अर्नड। तो इसलिए जब 40% गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया का खर्चा जो है बोगस वो बच गया, इट मीन उतनी इनकम जनरेटेड हो गई। तो इसलिए बहुत ज्यादा गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया को इसका जो बेनिफिट हुआ है। तो ये काम कैसे करता है अब उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा बता दूंगा। ये ऑनलाइन पोर्टल है एक्सपेंडिचर मॉनिटरिंग सिस्टम का, जहाँ तो फंड गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया से सीधा इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी के पास आता है। तो उसमें इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी का जो रजिस्ट्रेशन होता है सिस्टम पे, पोर्टल पे ऑनलाइन है, उसका बैंक अकाउंट लिंक होता है। और बैंक अकाउंट लिंक होने से जो फंड है गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया से सीधे उसके अकाउंट में आता है। और फर्दर फिर पेमेंट के लिए वो पीएफएम पोर्टल पे ही पेमेंट जो है प्रोसेस करता है। इसमें जो पेमेंट के सिस्टम है वो सारे डिजिटल है, ई पेमेंट है, चाहे वो वेंडर को हो या बेनिफिशियरी के हो या ई ट्रांसफर को हो आगे किसी लोअर एजेंसी को। तो इसमें पेमेंट के जो सिस्टम है वो सिर्फ दो रखे गए हैं, डिजिटल मोड है। एक तो प्रिंट पेमेंट एडवाइस है, जैसे ही कोई इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी किसी बेनिफिशियरी का डाटा ऐड करती है तो सिस्टम जनरेटेड एक एडवाइस प्रिंट होती है, वो बैंक को भेजनी होती है, और डिजिटल फाइल जो है बैंक को ऑलरेडी सिस्टम के थ्रू चली जाती है, और बैंक को वो एडवाइस जो है वो प्रोसेस करता है। तो ऑनलाइन पेमेंट है। और दूसरा जो मोड ऑफ पेमेंट है वो थ्रू डिजिटल साइन सर्टिफिकेट। तो आजकल डिजिटल साइन सर्टिफिकेट का बहुत चलन है, और ये भी धीरे धीरे गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया में तो तकरीबन मैंडेटरी है, हर ऑफिस में हो रहा है। स्टेट्स में भी ये कह दिया गया है कि आप इस पे थोड़ा फोकस करिए और पेमेंट जो है वो डिजिटल साइन सर्टिफिकेट कीजिए। इसमें जो इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी वही डिजिटल साइन सर्टिफिकेट जो है वो वहाँ कन्फिगर करके उसको पेमेंट इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी से ही कर देती है। उसमें बैंक की प्रोविजन भी नहीं है, बैंक में भी जाने की जरूरत नहीं है, इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी ही फर्दर पेमेंट कर देती है। तो दूसरे केस में जहाँ फंड स्टेट की ट्रेजरी के थ्रू आता है, उस केस में भी अगर ट्रेजरी डायरेक्ट पेमेंट करती है बेनिफिशियरी के अकाउंट में तो पीएफएम सिस्टम की जरूरत नहीं है, क्यों जो हर स्टेट की ट्रेजरीज है वो इंटीग्रेट हो चुकी है पीएफएम सिस्टम से। तो पीएफएम सिस्टम का जो सर्वर है वो वहीं से डाटा जो सारा कैप्चर कर लेता है और मिनिस्ट्री को प्रोवाइड कर देता है। इस जिस केस में ट्रेजरी जो पेमेंट है फर्दर डीडीओ के या इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी के बैंक अकाउंट में पेमेंट कर दिया है, वहां भी पीएफएम मैंडेटरी कर दिया गया है, ताकि जो इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी है जब ट्रेजरी पेमेंट करे इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी को, तो फर्दर इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसी ही पीएफएमएस पोर्टल पे उसकी जो बेनिफिशियरी की पेमेंट है वो प्रोसेस करेगी और वो फर्दर उसी पेमेंट से उसी पोर्टल से पेमेंट उसी मोड से कर देगी। अब पहले जो है पेमेंट होती थी चेक से होती थी, ड्राफ्ट से होती थी, कैश भी होती थी, आरटीजीएस होती थी, तो उसमें कई बार कई कॉम्प्लिकेशंस रह जाती थी। किसी का अकाउंट नंबर गलत हो गया, किसी गलत अकाउंट में चली गई, किसी गलत वेंडर में चली गई। मगर पीएफएम पोर्टल पे ऑल इंडिया लेवल पे डाटाबेस होने की वजह से इसमें डुप्लीकेसी जो है बैंक अकाउंट की वो पॉसिबल नहीं। वेंडर का चाहे बेनिफिशियरी का जो बैंक अकाउंट है वो पीएफएम पोर्टल सबसे पहले बैंक सर्वर से वेरीफाई करता है कि आइदर ये बैंक अकाउंट उसी का है या नहीं है। तो इस वजह से गलत अकाउंट में जो पेमेंट जाने की जो समस्या है वो भी इससे खत्म हो गई है। गलत अकाउंट में भी पेमेंट नहीं जाएगी, गलत वेंडर को भी पेमेंट नहीं जाएगी। ऑल इंडिया लेवल पे डाटाबेस है, आप एक स्टेट में बैठे भी देश के किसी भी दूसरे पार्ट में किसी भी वेंडर को जो पेमेंट वो ऑनलाइन कर सकते हो। तो सबसे मेन जो है इसका बेनिफिट ट्रांसपेरेंसी एंड अकाउंटेबिलिटी। अब आजकल पब्लिक एक्सपेंडिचर में ट्रांसपेरेंसी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। मोस्टली यही है कि जी गवर्नमेंट का खर्चा है या पब्लिक मनी है या पब्लिक एक्सपेंडिचर है वो कहाँ जाता है किसी को पता ही नहीं चलता। और आजकल हर एक जानना चाहता है कि ठीक है मेरे टैक्स का पैसा कहाँ खर्चा हुआ। तो इसमें पीएम पोर्टल में एक यूनिकनेस है कि इसमें जो ट्रांजैक्शन की एंट्री का सिंगल सिस्टम रखा गया है। मल्टीपल लेवल से एंट्री नहीं हो सकती इसमें, सिर्फ एक सिंगल एंट्री सिस्टम है जहां से ट्रांजैक्शन की एंट्री होगी बेनिफिशियरी की और फर्दर अथॉरिटी को लगता है तो वो उसको एडिट या डिलीट नहीं कर सकते, वो उसको रिजेक्ट करके दोबारा एंट्री लेवल पे भेजेंगे। तो यूनिक एंट्री लेवल है और सारी एंट्री जो है वो थ्रू लॉगिनरी पासवर्ड है, पासवर्ड प्रोटेक्टेड है, दूसरा कोई अथॉरिटी उसका पासवर्ड देख नहीं सकता। इसमें कोई जो ट्रांजैक्शन है वो एडिट नहीं हो सकती, डिलीट नहीं हो सकती। तो इसीलिए इसमें कोई भी एंट्री हाइड नहीं हो सकती किसी भी लेवल पे, चाहे कोई मिनिस्ट्री में बैठा है कोई अथॉरिटी, चाहे कोई एंट्री हाइड करनी है छुपानी है तो वो पॉसिबल नहीं है किसी भी लेवल। इस पे हर एक एंट्री जो है ट्रांसपेरेंट है तो हर लेवल देख सकता है। और दूसरी बात रही अकाउंटेबिलिटी की। अब अकाउंटेबिलिटी क्योंकि एंट्री सिस्टम जो है ट्रांजैक्शन की एंट्री वो सिंगल लेवल पे है, दूसरा कोई उस पर एंट्री कर ही नहीं सकता, ना एडिट कर सकता है, ना डिलीट कर सकता है, ना हाइड कर सकता है। तो बिल्कुल अकाउंटेबिलिटी बिल्कुल 100% क्लियर है कि जहां से एंट्री हुई है ही इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर, दूसरा कोई चेंज नहीं कर सकता उस पर। तो ट्रांसपेरेंसी और अकाउंटेबिलिटी जो 100% इसमें क्लियर है। और सबसे मेन जो बेनिफिट पब्लिक के लिए है वो ये है कि इसमें एक मीनू बनाया गया है नो योर पेमेंट्स। तो मैं अपनी कोई भी बेनिफिट की पेमेंट देखना चाहूँ तो मैं पोर्टल पे एज यूजर रजिस्ट्रेशन करके एमएस यूजर करके तो मैं अपनी सारी पेमेंट देख सकता हूँ, मुझे अपनी सारी पेमेंट का पता चल जाएगा। और दूसरा जो सेस इसमें रखा गया है पब्लिक एक्सपेंडिचर का किसी भी सिटीजन के लिए वो ये रखा गया है कि वो एक एमएस यूजर रजिस्ट्रेशन करेगा और वो किसी भी स्कीम का, किसी भी मिनिस्ट्री का, किसी भी लेवल का जो पब्लिक में एक्सपेंडिचर हुआ है, गवर्नमेंट का एक्सपेंडिचर हुआ है वो देख सकता है, उसमें वो सेस दिया जाएगा उसको। ये अभी 100% पीएफएमएल जो है रूट लेवल पे इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं हुआ, इसलिए अभी आम पब्लिक के लिए ये ओपन नहीं किया गया है। जो प्रोविजन रखी गई है इसमें बहुत यूनिक प्रोविजन है। इससे क्या है कि जो आरटीआई का लोड है हर ऑफिस पे वो कम हो जाएगा और पब्लिक को भी इस चीज का बेनिफिट मिलेगा कि वो किसी भी स्कीम में किसी भी लेवल पे कोई भी पब्लिक एक्सपेंडिचर देखना चाहे तो वो देख सकता है इसमें। तो ये एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट फीचर इसमें रखा गया है। तो गवर्नमेंट के लिए भी मॉनिटरिंग सिस्टम है, इसमें एक डिसीजन पोर्टल सिस्टम है। ये गवर्नमेंट की मिनिस्ट्री या प्रोग्राम डिवीजन या कोई भी मिनिस्ट्री किसी स्कीम की इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के बारे में देखना चाहे, उसकी प्रोग्रेस है, किस एरिया में कौन सी स्कीम प्रॉपर इम्प्लीमेंट हो रही है, नहीं हो रही, कहाँ फंड यूटिलाइज हो रहे हैं, क्या बेनिफिशियरी को पेमेंट ठीक हो रही है या नहीं हो रही, कितने बेनिफिशियरी को पेमेंट हुई है किस स्कीम में, तो ये सारे टूल्स इसमें अवेलेबल है पीएमएस पोर्टल पे। तो मिनिस्ट्री के लिए भी और आम पब्लिक के लिए भी ये बहुत एक बेनिफिशियल पोर्टल है, एक फ्रेंडली पोर्टल है। सेकेंडली ये एक थोड़ा बताना चाहूँ कि ये एक यूनिवर्सल प्लेटफॉर्म है एक्सपेंडिचर मॉनिटरिंग। यूनिवर्सल का मतलब कि हर स्कीम में, हर लेवल में, हर तरह की स्कीम के लिए ये एक ही प्लेटफॉर्म है, एक ही सिस्टम है। ऐसा इसमें अलग अलग प्रोसीजर नहीं है कि अलग मिनिस्ट्री के लिए अलग प्रोसीजर है, दूसरी मिनिस्ट्री के लिए अलग प्रोसीजर है। तो ऐसा बिल्कुल नहीं है, ये यूनिफॉर्म है और यूनिवर्सल प्लेटफॉर्म है। तो बड़ा फ्रेंडली यूजेबल है, ये बड़ा इजी है यूज करना। सिर्फ ये एक ऑनलाइन सिस्टम है, इसमें मैनुअल सिस्टम जो सारा खत्म कर दिया गया है और 100% डिजिटलाइजेशन की ओर एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट स्टेप है गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया। थैंक यू।
Right. Thank you, Jaswinder ji, for this very comprehensive and great information about the public financial management system. And the best part, as you said, is that 40% of the expenses have been reduced after we went on this PFMS, and money saved is money earned. And secondly, the other important thing I would like to summarize is that even public can go and see how the money is being spent. And I think the third part, wherein a lot of the money management and lot of expenses which happened between the transaction between the center and the state governments, that can also now be traced and that can also now be culminated. So thanks a lot for this. Now we have some time for the some questions that can be taken. So I think first, I mean, there were 2-3 questions for Mr. Mastan Singh. About the efficacy of GST and its implementation in this country. Mastandi, would you like to comment?
Sir, regarding the implementation of GST, I personally feel there is certain hurry with the government that they would like to implement in a very hurry mode. In the country, it should have been in a phased manner. But overall, the scenario, what we were thinking that it will not be beneficial for the economy, but it had a numerous benefit for the country as a whole. Regarding the rates, which you had mentioned, regarding the rate, there is a comparison which I do have available with me. So in majority of the cases, we used to compare only the end rates. But in this scenario, ultimately the costing part for the end consumer has been reduced because the pricing of a product has been reduced, because there is a benefit of input tax that is available to from manufacturer till the consumer. There is a chain which is involved. There are certain taxes in the earlier regime which were not absorbed, which were not they were not able to take the benefit of input taxes on that, and there was a tax on tax in that scenario. And there was another question regarding the rates. So broadly speaking, there used to be only 3 or 4 slabs, but as per the demand of the economy and the traders and the different sectors which were governing, so in case of service sector, there are rates for restaurant and other services. We classify it at a 5%, for 12%, 18%, 28%. Very few items are at 28%. Majority of items were taxed at either 12%, 18%. And there is, in service sector also, there is a composition scheme which was never been available before. So if somebody would like to avail composition scheme, what is a composition? It is just, you will not be able to get the benefit of inputs. You just have to pay taxes on the output supply, on the gross amount. So similarly, in case of goods also, there is a slab rate of 3%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. So nil rate also, there are categories which are taxed at a nil rate. As per the question regarding the collections. So collections, there are figures with the department. There is a around 10% increase year to year in the October 2020 as compared to October 2019. There was an increase of around 10% in the collections, and in September also there was a increase of around 4%, and in November there was slightly less increase, there were 1.4. So during this tough time, there is a collection. In the COVID time from April to say August, there was a lower revenue collection because the economy was not working. So overall, as compared in for the state governments, there is a slighter downfall because this is a consumption based tax. So earlier, the states who are producer oriented states, they used to get more taxes, but now the taxes collection has been shifted to the consumption based states where the population is more. So this is the overall scenario regarding the taxation this, but it is an overall benefit in the plus point of economy. It will take another 2-3 years to settle down.
Right. Thank you, Mastanji, for explaining the how GST is panned out and the implementation issues and all. Now, Kushji, there's a question regarding what is reverse bidding. Can you please explain what is reverse bidding in GEM?
Reverse auction, because I had said I tried to answer all of the questions in the comment box. I've answered most of them. Reverse auction is, as I was telling you, that it is the complete opposite of an auction. What would happen is that department would take out an order for procurement. Now people would first send in their technical bids, and the department would analyze the technical bids and basis that shortlist the vendors. Now, after the vendors have been shortlisted, the time of bidding for reverse auction will start. The difference is that in bids, they also send their price bids. Herein what will happen is, after they are technically evaluated, then they will be given a timeline to start the bidding process, and there will be a reference price from which the bidding will start. For example, there are 4 vendors who had participated in the bid for computers. 3 of them have been technically qualified. Now the department asked them to take part in the reverse auction, and the reference price is from 10,000. So any of us 3 can now participate. The first bid should have, all the bids have to be less than the current L1. The first is the reference price, which is 10,000. So let us say I will quote 9,990. What will happen is, now I will become the L1. The rest of the 2 can see what is the current price. They would not know who's the person who has put the price, but they will see what the current price is. The department has to do nothing. For us, the system is opaque. We will only get the final price after the time has ended. But all the vendors who are participating, they can see the current L1. So now you want to take the order, you will input a price of 9,980. Another vendor, he wants to take it, he would bring it further down to 9,970, 65, 63, and so on and so forth till the time of bidding is there. At the end of that time, whoever has bidded the lowest amount will become the L1, and the order will be given to him. And apart from that, I think there was another question which they had asked that what are the things which GEM has done for quality control. So I would say that earlier this was one of the things which GEM was not keeping in mind, that we wanted more and more vendors to come. So we had our policies were different at that point of time. Currently, if I talk about going ahead from this year, there is something called a caution money which has been started by GEM, and a vendor, depending on his or her turnover, will have to place a caution money with GEM while they are becoming a part of GEM. Earlier, GEM was totally free. Apart from that, all the vendors, be it sellers or service providers, will now have to get themselves assessed through Quality Council of India. either for products or services, whatever they are selling. That has also been there, so that the quality is controlled. And apart from that, the incident management system is already there, wherein you can raise a complaint against any vendor. That part is already there. And apart from that, the consignee himself or herself also has the ability to inspect the material, and basis his inspection, then only they will accept the material. They can reject it also. So it is not mandatory for them to accept the material. And
Right.
there is just one more question which has just come up from Mr. Puneet Puri. He says that the buyer can also affix the PIN code. Oh, I have already answered that earlier, Mr. Puri, that the buyer can choose the district or the state. They cannot now choose the PIN code for their buying.
Okay. Thank you, Kushti. There was another question. I think maybe you would have answered in the chat box, but I think it's important, and maybe we can discuss that also. That somebody's asked that if somebody wants to have an imported machinery,
Right.
whether it is permitted under GEM, and then what is the process?
See, now I had given an option of, there are two ways of going about it. Firstly, if an item is not available on the portal, there is something called custom bid, which a vendor can, which a buyer can create. And that custom bid is for all kinds of products which are there in the market. They might not be available on the GEM. That is why there is a custom bid option. And if the department requires, they can raise the requirement for such items which are not available from India. They are available from outside. Following all the rules and regulations set by the department, they can raise that through the custom bid option.
Mr. Gurdeep Singh has raised the hand. Mr. Gurdeep, if you want to ask a question, you can ask, please. Mr. Gurdeep Singh, you want? Okay. So I think
Mr. Zubair Masoodi has also raised his hand.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Zubair.
Doctor, thank you, Dr. Sanjeev Chedda, and thank you, Dr. Kush and Mastanji, for organizing this wonderful webinar. The question I had is that we often find it difficult to kind of transfer the payment to the sellers who do not hold a J&K bank account in the through the PFMSs. So what's the alternative to that? Hello.
Yeah, Mastanji, would you like to answer this question?
I think, sir, this is related to PFMS.
Okay, okay. Yeah, Jaswinder Singh ji. Okay, Mr. Zubair, can you please repeat the question so that yeah, once again, please.
Yeah, Dr. Sanjeev, the question is that let's suppose we have a seller
Right.
who shipped in some items to us. We are a government buying agency. And while we raise the bill for that seller, the PMFS requires us to have a J&K bank account for that seller in order for us to make the payment to him. So
Ji.
it's often a big challenge for us how to make payments to those sellers who do not own a J&K bank account, making the payment through PMFS.
Right, got it. Jaswinder ji, would you like to answer that if there's no account, the person does not have an account in Jammu and Kashmir Bank, then how to go about this?
Yes.
Yeah, Jaswinder ji, please.
All the nationalized and even corporate bank has an integrated PFM server. So if a vendor has an account in any other bank other than J&K, the payment is possible through PFMS. All the servers of all banks are integrated with PFMS. So there should be no problem in it.
Okay.
Just give the details to the agency. They may enter your details as vendor. They may link a bank account of any bank, any national bank or even rural bank. The payment will be made. There is no problem of bank in PFMS. All payments
Jaswinder ji, if they are facing this problem, then how to get this problem rectified? Whom should they approach so that this problem is rectified?
Government of India, Ministry of Finance has opened a unit of PFMS in each state headquarters. They can approach their state headquarters, state directorate of PFMS. Even if they are in J&K, Jammu and Kashmir has its own unit, state unit of PFMS, state directorate. So,
Right. So thank you so much. Yeah, Zubair ji. So you can approach, let's say, what Jaswinder ji has informed that I mean all nationalized banks are eligible. They can have accounts there. So even if then you face a problem, then you can approach the directorate to get this problem rectified. I hope this
Thank you,
all.
Dr. Sanjeev. Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. Thank you.
If there's any other question, we can take up. Yeah, Mr. Uday, UP Singh sir, you raised your hand. Yeah, question you can ask, please. Then after UP Singh sir, then Mr. Rajiv Taneja. Okay, was okay. Yeah, Mr. Singh, you can ask your question, Mr. UP Singh. Uday Prakash Singh sir. Okay, so I think Mr. Lalit.
Yes, sir. I would like to ask a question.
Yeah, please go ahead, please.
Just I want to know about GEM pool account. Is there any mechanism for tenderers and others vendors to open it, or buyers may open it? What is that GEM pool account? I would like to know.
Sure, Mr. Lalit. See, a GEM pool account is a concept for payment to the vendor, and it is opened by the department. It is not opened by vendors. What happens is non-PFMS entities, that is those entities which are not following PFMS, or the state, or their state treasury is registered with GEM. That apart from these two, if either they are following PFMS or their state treasury is with GEM. Apart from that, all of the vendors will soon have to open a GP account, GEM pool account. And GEM pool account is basically like PFMS only, where we block funds. In GPA, at the time of placing the order, there should be funds available in the account. Then only the system will allow the department to place the order. And after the order has been completed, it has been delivered, inspected and accepted by the department, and the invoice has been raised by the department. The draft bill, sorry, not the invoice, the draft bill has been raised. Then within 10 days of raising the bill, if the department does not pay, then 80% of the sum from that GPA account will be transferred to the vendor automatically after 10 days, that is on the 11th day. This is the concept of GEM pool account in a gist which I could answer. I hope you are clear now.
Yeah, thank you, Kushti. So I think ISL research.
Thank you, it's clear, Kushti. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kush. Most of my queries are resolved. So one query I have in my mind that in our university, what we are doing is some of the people have multiple profiles. Like one professor is there, he is or she is also Dean Academic Affairs or Registrar. So if he or she is having multiple profiles, so I think one profile is allowed in GEM portal. So what for other positions we go for?
Sir, this change has now, I think it is about to come, or it has already come, that now you can have multiple profiles. Earlier also it was there. Earlier the only difference was that you have to make different government email IDs for having multiple accounts. Now with the single email, government email also, you can have multiple GEM accounts. So earlier also you could have multiple, like I have a charge of, let us take your example, I have a charge of chemistry department, IT department and MBA. 3 charges I have. So earlier what I should have done was that I should have created 3 government email IDs in my name, and then have registered in all 3 of them in IT, chemistry and MBA. Now with the same email ID also I can have 3 different accounts.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kush. Mr. Rajiv Taneja, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, my question is to Kush. Thanks, Kush. for a wonderful session. In your session, you mentioned about two things, that there's this one payment mode, GemPool account, and the other is the PFMS. And in the same sentence, you also mentioned that new payment methods are about to come. What are those new payment methods that are about to come?
In fact, I was saying that it was not a new payment method. Rather, GPA would soon be mandatory. Right now, all the other methods, that is check, demand draft, RTGS, NEFT, that those are available, but those are considered offline methods for GEM. But going ahead, GEM is going to make GPA mandatory for all non-PFMS and non-treasury entities.
Right. So I just got like carried away. Another new method which is coming, maybe
Yes, yes.
UPI. You want to come on to the
No,
UPI
no,
thing
no,
or something?
no,
Okay.
nothing of that sort. I might have mispronounced it, probably.
No, no problem. Thank you, question. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kush, and thank you, Mr. Taneja, for asking this query. I think if we've already, we already crossed the time that we had. So, friends, I would like to thank the three panelists, Mr. Kush Tyagi, Mr. Mustan Singh Chambrial, and Mr. Jaswinder Singh, for their time and this very, very informative session on three important aspects in financial reforms that have been undertaken in this country of late. And as I said initially also, that the topics are vast, and I think on each of the topics we can have multiple sessions. But my point here was just to, just to sensitize you to certain aspects which are being done, so that you know what the government initiatives are. And I think with these three aspects which have just started, and maybe certain baby steps have been taken by the government to bring about more transparency, bring about more accountability, and to bring about more to end all kind of corruptions in the system, which we like while we are there in the foreign countries and all. I think it's all because of the technology that they have been able to get things up. So I think we have also started on these lines, and with these three steps that the government have taken, and especially on the digital platforms, I think the financial accountability, because that is the major accountability that one has in terms of both tax collection also, and in terms of the expenditure part also. So both aspects are being taken care of wherein. But yes, thanks to the lovely audience with a lot of questions. I think it was a lot of interaction that took place, and we would further, if there's any, because the feedback forms that we have sent across to you, if you think that we should go ahead in any of the reforms in details, you can just outline therein, and then we can take it in subsequent seminars and webinars. So once again, I thank the three panelists, the lovely audience, the IHRDI team, comprising of Sanya Chadda, Dr. S.K. Sharma, Mohammad Suleimanji, Mr. JPS Talwar, who work from behind the scenes to bring about these sessions to you week on week basis. And the e-certificate will be available to you. Kindly fill these feedback forms, so we'll be sent you across. Plus the recording of the session will be available in a day or two on IHRDI platform. So if you think if you think you would like to have the recording, you can ping me on 8727857116. I repeat, 8727857116. So if you just say hi to me on this WhatsApp number, we'll take it in the contact list, and thereafter you will get all the notifications which are therein. So friends, thanks once again. Thanks once and all. Be safe, be secure. So good afternoon to all of you. Goodbye and sayonara. Namaskar, Sabhi.